Ringing in the new year with more executive orders. President Obama's new White House counselor, John Podesta, he wrote the book on how to use them to bypass Congress and push through progressive policies on his own. This is what Podesta said very bluntly back in 2010. The ability of President Obama to accomplish important change through these powers should not be underestimated. Well, now some here say that means taxpayers better hold on to their wallets in 2014. Hi, everybody. I'm David Asman. Welcome to Forbes on Fox. Let's go in focus with Steve Forbes, Rich Karlgaard, Elizabeth McDonald, Sabrina Schaefer, Mark Taggi, and John Tamny. So, Steve, are these going to help or hurt the economy, these extra powers?
Well, with this administration, they're going to hurt the economy, and you already see it. The IRS is now going after conservative groups under rulemaking, even though they did it illegally before. EPA is still going after fracking and shutting down the coal industry. You see it in the Federal Reserve. You see it in other agencies. And their attitude is, we'll do the laws, do the decrees like a third world country, and let the courts clean it up later.
So, Mark Taggi, extra powers for the president means extra costs for taxpayers.
Well, look, let's put this in perspective. Just about every president has pursued some sort of an agenda, and they've pursued it through executive orders. I mean, going way back to Ronald Reagan and his firing of the air traffic controllers. So why shouldn't Obama use this tool at a time when Congress is in a stalemate? And plus, I think you're forgetting that there's a lot of positive things that come out of executive orders. Things as far as aid for Hurricane Sandy victims, expedited review of cancer drugs, things dealing with non-use of or prohibition of biological agents in warfare.
Well,
so,
Rich,
why are executive orders an evil thing?
Rich, it is true that other presidents have used executive orders. However, this blueprint, the blueprint that Podesta outlined in 2010, which he will probably implement in 2014, goes way beyond what other presidents have done.
Yeah, Mark has a point about executive orders. You can look it up. Obama has not used that very often. He has used other kinds of orders to completely disrupt the economy. He's changed his own health care law 14 times. That's pretty dubious and constitutionally questionable. It has thrown 1/6 of the economy into chaos. You looked after the BP oil spill. He fined, without any authority at all, BP $20 billion. He suspended drilling in the Gulf, again without any authority. So what really it put the official words executive orders aside and look at the amount of manipulation this president has done in the economy.
And Emac, I would add to that list, by the way, GM bondholders who lost all their stuff due to the car czar. So there are a lot of things, but combine all he has done with the new executive order policy of Podesta, that's kind of scary, no?
Yeah, because it's about unchecked authority, right? And that's what we're really talking about. It's also about, it's bad for taxpayers because it makes the government even less transparent. It makes it about as transparent as a bucket of molasses. The fear of executive orders to bring us into military action, say in Libya or Syria, is always a fear there. And the thing is, we've got a government now that is in love with reform no matter what. We don't need any more reform. We need reform of the big things like entitlements. That's not happening. That should go through Congress. But, the thing is, when you change the rules, when you do things like executive orders, it also breeds a cynicism. It breeds a cynicism on the part of taxpayers. So if you're going to be changing things all the time, then why follow the laws?
And it's not what our founders had in mind. I mean, they had this check and balance system, which there is none of in executive orders. And, John, frankly, our stock market is very happy with divided government, is it not?
Oh, no question. When politicians are playing around with laws and legislating, taxpayers should watch their wallets, and you should also watch the stock market with fear. And that's why I'm a little bit more optimistic about this. President Obama's legislative program ended a year ago. You've seen that in a major stock market rally since then. History says that second-term presidents get very little done, and the notion that someone who's overseen such a failed legislation, his signature legislation, will achieve a lot, I don't think is credible.
And Sabrina, this is a president who really likes to get things done. I mean, you see what he did in the first term, in his first 2 years when he had Congress and everything. He might get frustrated. He might get desperate and perhaps use these powers to an extent he hasn't yet.
Yeah, and that's exactly the reason that we're seeing this right now, because obviously in the second term, we know that President Obama is not going to be able to get his next signature domestic issue climate change accomplished without executive orders to help him. And we already have seen some of this, leading up to this. But, sometimes it goes beyond dollars and cents. I looked back at some of the executive orders. Recently, he administered one to change the discipline culture at public schools. Well, this is in effect a discipline quota. It doesn't actually help students who are trapped in failing schools. It avoids the hard work of passing something through proper congressional channels.
Sabrina points out a great thing, Steve, which is that education is a big part of this agenda. And again, you look at the educational record, like the record of a lot of things with this administration, that kind of policy doesn't seem to work.
No, it doesn't. And this is an example of government overreach. Remember, David, regulation is a form of taxation, and there are very few restrictions on it, especially with these so-called independent agencies. They can pretty much do what they want, and it's very, very hard to turn them back. And that imposes a real cost. So even though he's going to be stymied in Congress, he's going to go full bore. You saw what he did with the D.C. Appellate Court, appointed 3 judges. They weren't needed. There were judges are under work there. He appointed them to rig the courts, and you're going to see that rigging elsewhere.
Mark Tanji, I would guess that when President Nixon was in power, you used the term imperial presidency once or twice. I mean, doesn't that thought of, a strong presidency is one thing, but an imperial presidency is something else. I don't think you want that, do you?
I don't think we have any more of an imperial presidency now than we did under George Herbert Walker Bush or Ronald Reagan, who has all that legacy about him. So, look, presidents issue orders. It's an ability. It's a checked power. It's something that's given to them by the Constitution. And Congress is doing nothing. We have a do-nothing Congress that's stalemated, that can't even agree on a budget.
Well, Congress is doing a lot. They're preventing the overreach of big government, right, EMAC? That's very significant, I think, EMAC.
Yeah, I hear your point. By the way, the Senate did just enact a budget, but finally, we were like Belgium going without a budget for years.
Yeah.
But, the question is, and it's a good one that you raised, David, these are also extraordinary actions that are now becoming ordinary. They should not be ordinary. Right. And Jonathan Turley, the historian, just recently said that this president is behaving worse than other presidents in recent history. Yes, George W. Bush did a lot of signing statements, but President Obama is doing more signing statements than ever before and enacting this barbed wire pile of rules and regulations.
We went through the list before. Go ahead, Sabrina.
Well, EMAC is right. One of the real problems is that you don't have any means for debate when you have an executive order, right? Especially in the issue of climate change, for instance. If we were going to have, actual legislation, there would be a conversation for the American people to take part in. But with the executive order, what you're finding is that the president is setting up a task force made up almost entirely of Democrats, for instance, in which the American people don't even know this is happening. They don't have a chance to voice their opinion. So I think that there's the transparency issue has gone out the window.
Well, and John Tamny, I know a lot of people in the opposition, a lot of the Republicans say, hey, look, just sit back. He's a wounded president. He's not going to get much done. But the fact that he brought Podesta in, the fact that Podesta does have this plan, a very specific plan of moving things towards a progressive agenda ahead without Congress, doesn't that make you a little nervous?
It makes me a little nervous, but that's the point of electing Republicans to begin with, to create this gridlock that we want. Mark talks about a do-nothing Congress. To me, that sounds beautiful. One of the most animating features of the Constitution is that we block people from getting things done. It's the job of the Republicans. They were elected to block a president.
Let's just get rid of Congress,
and we'll be fine.
Well, Rich Karlgaard,
Rich
Karlgaard, the fact is Congress didn't used to be as obtrusive as it is now. It was only in power for a couple of weeks every year.
Yeah, Newt Gingrich and Bill Clinton worked together, Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan. This president has not crossed the aisle in any meaningful way, and then he's surprised that he has no support. He'd had not a single Republican vote in the House or Senate for his health care bill. Look, what he's really shown is that he's kind of a sneaky president. He's not very transparent, Mark.
It's not
this
very
is one
fair.
of the least transparent presidencies that we've ever seen. I think this is more dangerous than I wish I could share John Tamny's optimism.
All right, we got to leave it at that. Last word from the publisher.